to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Well, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta, and I am the Quiet Warrior. And I'm really excited to have on my show today, Janaki Chakravarthy. Janaki, thank you for being part of the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Tom. I'm delighted to be part of the Silent Warrior Show.
We definitely are silent, quiet warriors. You know, it's funny. I wanted just to say publicly as we start this that my audience is North America and international, and we have a lot of people that listen to this show, and they look for advice and leadership in life. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is your story is so heartfelt for me. It touched me. And so before we get into that, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a life coach based out of Southern California. I'm also a writer. And I help single moms recreate their lives so that they can be, they can move forward confidently as breadwinners, which is their new job, and also be the best parents that they can, the mom and the dad kind of parent for their children. Before this, I had a 25-year plus IT career. I came into IT as a novice and then matured, grew, and became an IT service management specialist, became a consultant and also a manager. And this was the period in my life when I also was a single mom. I opted to be a single mom and grew and kind of matured as a confident and hopefully, a mom that my daughters were proud of.
Well, first of all, we're all proud of you. I mean, I just met you through your body of work, and wow, what a talent you are. Let me just build up on that a bit because I've read your bio and there's a lot more to you. So yes, a certified life coach, and also you have a company called Possibilities. And what I'm remarking about is 45 years you lived in India before you made the change. So what courage to come across to the United States and make that your home. And of course, you'll get into that story in a moment. I'm fascinated by how you built an IT career. So you were a career woman and then found a purpose to doing something completely different, which became a passion of yours. And I'm up here in Vancouver, British Columbia. You're down in California. I wanted to tell you that I have family down there from my dad's side and very familiar with that great part of the United States. So why don't we get into your story, as you're very familiar with the hero's journey narrative that my show is based on. And it's really about people who have had successful lives and they've taken a journey. And sometimes when something happens, maybe it's not as positive, they decide to go on an adventure to do something completely different in their lives. And they come back almost as a shaman or a guide to help other people. And your story is classic that. I wanted to also say that I'm proud of you because you've written a book. You're an author as well. And we'll get to that at the end and let the listeners know where they can find your book. But it's really after reading that and learning about your story that intrigued me. So take us back, Janaki, to that part of your life where it began and take us on that adventure.
Sure. So as I said, it was 45 years of my life. I spent in India, southern India.
Yeah.
I grew up. I was born into a middle class Brahmin family, and grew up to be an obedient daughter.
Right.
And in those days, the norms for girls and women was that by the time you hit your 20s, you expected to be married off. That was the goal for the woman.
Yeah.
And, that was the value with which I was brought up too. I kind of rebelled a little bit in the sense that I chose my own husband in order, as opposed to being, having an arranged marriage. So my husband was from a different community. They spoke a different language, religion, all of that.
Yep.
but what I thought was love, after about 5 years and maybe into the second 5 years of the first decade of my marriage, I found that our values were very different. The expectations of or the objectives for a life together were very different between me and my husband.
Yeah.
We had 2 daughters by the time, and I found that I was unhappy, and we were constantly quarreling, at loggerheads with one another. And it was not an atmosphere that I wanted my daughters to grow up in. As well as, them being daughters, I did not want the kind of values that were foisted on me. I wanted them to become confident young women, able to support themselves. So those were the kind of objectives that I had for me and my daughters. And after about 10 years, I said the marriage was not going anywhere. And I had previously tried to conform to the traditional Indian wife and mother kind of role,
Yeah.
and that did not suit me. So I decided to, that it was a hard choice, but I said the marriage is not for me. I opted to become a single mom, had custody of my children. And then, around that time, I also realized, now, how am I going to bring up my children?
Yeah.
I didn't have a job. Because I had a home science degree, my parents thought that that degree would be great for making an excellent homemaker. So I said, I'm not qualified, and how do I bring up my children on my own? To be self-sufficient financially and give them that value. So I had to start as I was. I mean, there was no time to lose. There was no time to say, oh, I'll go and get another degree.
Yeah.
No time for all of that. So I just made a start. There were, people with goodwill who suggested that I could, start here or there. And it was funny that I started off my first job in an IT hardware company, and but it was really 3 or 4 jobs that finally made me land in an IT services company in the city of Bangalore in India. That gave me the break, because that was the start of my long IT career, as well as the stability of having, being in a good company and then being able to grow and increase my earning capacity.
Yeah.
And so I saw myself learning, because home science to IT is like a huge gap.
Yeah.
Very different, but I found that IT was fascinating.
Sure.
And I learned the concepts, and I was I was so thirsty for knowledge. And that kind of spirit helped me move up, grow into the company. And fortunately, the IT services in India were going through that boom at that time of my life. And it was also it's everything. It's like being in the right place at the right time.
Yes.
A little of everything. That I grew, and then I became a specialist and then an expert in a field called IT service management. And that was again a very new field within IT. And I helped. I mean, I contributed to that area by editing the framework books that came out. It was called ITIL.
Yes.
And I felt wonderful, because within 5 years of my deciding to become a single mom, I had reached the financial self-sufficiency, but then to also then have a career where I contributed, I learned, that was a wonderful feeling. And I did that. And along the way, the people who knew me as a person referred me to other Indian women
Yeah.
going through similar situations, and they would say, hey, why don't you talk to this person, because she's having such a tough time, and we think that you can give her some words of advice or inspiration. And so that became like a second kind of a vacation, I would say, and I felt so empathetic towards these women,
Yes.
and I would spend hours talking to them on the phone, and kind of trying to heal them and give them the courage. Yes, you can do this. You can do this.
Yeah.
And so at a point when I felt that my IT career was satisfying enough, but I didn't want to go further there. This becoming a life coach, especially to single moms, became like almost a natural choice, to help other women, help them find the courage, the confidence, and just motivating them and creating, with them, partnering with them for a plan of action. That became kind of my passion.
Well, I'm just going to get you to catch your breath there for a minute so I can jump in. And I want to honor you, first of all, the courage to tell your story so far. We'll continue in a minute, get you into that next part about how you turn this into the book and what you've done with it. But I'm fascinated, and I just want to say what we've heard so far. I mean, there you were, 45 years in India. I mean, it's incredible. And then you chose your own partner outside of what maybe traditional belief is. That's courage. You went through this 10 years in your marriage and discovered the values were different. And, maybe at the age of 20, many people don't really know what love is. I certainly understand that. So you made a change. I mean, you went out on your own. You had 2 daughters, and then decided to go from this home science degree into IT and climbed the ladder, 3 to 4 jobs, found your way, and became an expert in your field. And then this calling inside, this passion, because other people were connecting with you, saying, "How did you do that?" Other women who were struggling. And you found this passion to be a life coach. I mean, I'm just so blown away by the courage of your story, but I want to bring in now why this is such an important topic. And for the listeners, many people know my story. I've written a book as well. And my parents were born and raised in Fiji, Janaki, and both my parents' were from India. And so, unlike your situation, there are some differences. But we came to this country of Canada, and my father became a bad alcoholic, and our home was very toxic and violent. And eventually, my parents divorced, and I can spend a whole show talking about the experience, but today's about the spotlight on you. But what I wanted to do is let you know that, when I heard about your story, I started thinking a lot about my mom and my home. And my mother raised 3 boys. I'm the middle son. My older brother's a year older, and I have a younger brother, 6 years younger. But if you can imagine, in their teen years, the parents divorced. My dad had many affairs, adulterous affairs. He was an alcoholic. He was harmful to my mother with violence and physical and mental abuse. All of this was going on. And in the Indian culture, there is an unwritten rule that still sometimes we come across where you just don't talk about those things. And, the woman's place is to be the helpmeet in the family, to stay, and you just don't leave. So for a long time, my mom stayed in a bad marriage. And finally, after having enough, she decided to leave. And when she made that decision, Janaki, people ostracized her. Even to this day, people in that traditional Indian community up here in Canada will call my mom names and put her down for not staying in this bad relationship. And well, my dad passed away in January, and I started thinking when I read your book and with the amazing work you're doing about how there were times I remember where she was raising us and she didn't have enough money to put food on the table. When the house sold, she lost the house. We didn't know where we were going to live. But she found a way. She had this courage to keep moving forward. And so after reading your book, I learned that your circumstances weren't necessarily one of a violent marriage. But I come across this a lot in Canada, in the Indian community, and it exists in other communities as well, that there's things that happen in relationships, respect for women and situations that happen, that there's sometimes a different set of cultural rules. And really, in North America, as I'm sure you'll tell us, there's a very different set of values and rules. So I'm very honored and excited about what you're telling us so far. Now take us and keep going forward where you were at that point when you became a life coach, and then you decided to take your experiences and share it and do some things with that. Why don't you tell us more?
Yes. What I found was when I was a single mom, when I had my IT career, when I was informally coaching other women, there was no time to kind of put my thoughts together. It was, it was more like, you have the potential to be a coach, but you're not, you're not skilled at it, or you're not certified. You're not educated. All of that. So once I retired from my IT career, I decided to get a formal coaching certification. And the other thing was that I was then able to recall and kind of encapsulate what guided me in my life as a single mom, into kind of what I call the 6 ingredients
Yeah.
that make up a kind of a success recipe. And so then I was able to kind of put my thoughts and ideas and articulate them to my clients, in a more coherent and tangible way that they could understand and adopt. And so that was another kind of a maturity or evolution for me as a life coach. And every time I participated in a coaching conversation with my client, I learned and I grew.
Yeah.
And so the nuggets of wisdom that I gained from all of that is what made me write a book.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, because the idea of books have always inspired me, and
Sure.
the idea of touching many other people by writing a book, which would be available all over the world, was exciting, and it was I was very motivated into doing that.
Well, I'm very proud of you, and I want to say that it's a great book. The cover's amazing. It's beautiful, and that's why your story is so compelling, because it's such important work that you're doing. And I know you have 6 ingredients that you talk about in your book, and for the sake of time, we don't have chance to get into all that. So I just want to tease the audience a little bit with you. And one of the things that stood out for me was this concept of being a guardian mom, and it really blew my mind. And I'm going to get this book and give it to my mom, because I think later in life it's something she can certainly reflect on. And the other thing I was thinking about before I give it back to you again is that the next generation of women coming up, whether they're women from India or other cultures who integrate into North America, that these are what we call the millennial generation, or the Gen Xers and Gen Ys, and they're adopting very different set of values in these countries, yet they come from sometimes traditional values from their parents. And so tell us a bit about this guardian mom, if you can, in just a minute or so, this guardian mom concept, which I thought was fascinating.
So this was one of the key, moments of wisdom that I gained when I was struggling as a single mom and wondering where my, money was going to come from.
Yeah.
But I found that when you look at yourself, and I won't go into, people can read the book to figure out where it originated from.
Sure.
But I discovered the difference between where you have an ownership kind of feeling towards your children, which is very normal and natural, as opposed to, just detaching yourself. You're attached, you're affectionate, you love your children, but there's a little bit of detachment there where you say that I'm a caretaker. And therefore, it is not with pride and ownership and control that I'm going to bring up my children, but I'm going to be the delegate of the universe, which made me the channel for the children coming into the world. And I'm going to give the best that I can. But the children are the universe's gift to mankind, and therefore my job is to bring that out in the best in my children and hand them over to the world. I'm not going to cling on to them. I'm not going to be possessive, and I'm not going to expect them back, their love, or demand it or whatever. So,
well, yeah. I mean, that is brilliant. I got to say that when I read it again, and for everybody listening, in the leadership community, people are running businesses, whether it's your own business or at the top, Janaki, we come across a lot of this issue. I coach and mentor leaders. We come across a lot of this issue of divorce. And so I'm not only drawing on my own experience, but, letting go, and you have custody battles and people feeling regret, and parents struggling throughout their lives with how maybe their kids are feeling, or maybe sometimes this triangle develops between the parents, and they can't let go of the kids. And unfortunately, what happens outside of work manifests itself in work when we're leading other people. And I see it a lot in the work I'm doing. I love how this, this concept of being a guardian mom really, in my mind, changes psychologically the meaning of your role as a mom with your children to being a guardian, where it prepares you to set them free and let them go and be at peace within yourself. So I think that's just such a great lesson in leadership you've given us. I know people are going to want to catch the other 6 ingredients in the book. I want to also mention that when my mom went through the decision of divorce, unfortunately, sometimes there's an expectation that when couples are married, that together they set themselves up for their future. But we don't always think about what if one of them disappears, whether it's through divorce or death. And so sometimes the mom or the parent, whether it's mom or dad, who are looking after the household, they run into a financial situation because they didn't work. They're not the breadwinner. I think the title of your book is amazing, From Broke to Breadwinner. And it reminds me of the story back again with my childhood where my mom didn't have money. And so I want to ask you one more question before we move to wrapping up with you. And I guess 2 questions in one. And that is, how do you coach these women who are having to make these changes to deal with the fear and actually get through that change? Because I believe many people stay in bad marriages because they're fearful of the unknown, or they worry about not having money. So how did you deal with the fear, and what's your advice? And the second one is that once you're on the other side, tell us how your daughters are doing today in their lives.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So to answer the first question, I think, most of the women, my clients, as you said, have fears. And there's a lot of other things as well, the blame, self-pity. These, I would say all the barriers are internal. Sure. Because you don't have the confidence, and you've probably been demoralized in the whole situation as well. And so what I really try to do is to, first of all, make them understand and be aware that they have the fears, because that's the way of thinking, right? It's become so ingrained in them.
Yeah.
And, once they become aware, the awareness is the first step. Then they are able to understand, and then they are able to distinguish what they really want in their life for themselves and the children. The children are a powerful motivation. And then, what they are in, their differences that they begin to see. And then letting go of all this anger and helplessness. And, predominantly it's getting the women come out of these kind of negative emotions. And then they are ready to make a plan, to take a really small step forward. And as they start taking those really small steps, they start feeling power come into them. They feel empowered. They feel stronger, more confident. And then they go on to build their lives. And many times my coaching is for a limited period. And so I see that they are at that stage when they have a plan of action. And I'm always there for them to, come back and ask me any questions anytime.
Yeah, that's great. And how are your daughters doing now?
They are both, they're grown up, they're married, happily married. I have 2 granddaughters, one from each of them. And one has always been having a career with her momhood, parenthood, all of that.
Yeah.
My younger daughter had to have a short break for having the baby because she had, some medical issues.
Yes.
And then now she is ready to get back into the job. And, both of them have always been supportive and said that the best decision I made in my life was to disconnect with their father.
Yeah.
And now I'm great friends with them, and they are my young friends. We laugh together, they critique me, and it's such a joyful relationship with them.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I'm certainly proud of how that's all worked out in your story, and certainly what stands out for me, Janaki, is that not only have you done this, but the result of it is so positive that others who live in quiet desperation and fear can see you as a guide, as a mentor, and say, if she did it, I can do it. So that's the powerful part of the story. I want to read something out of your bio here. It says, that you want the readers or the single moms in the world to know that she is not alone in her struggles. She has resources within her to get her through and can successfully make it to the other side. And I think that's what's powerful. That I remember being told a long time ago that all you have and all you need is within you now. And it's really a lot to do with that psychology. And I think that, people who have heard this show certainly might reflect and consider reaching out to you and also reading your book. I'd highly recommend that. So I want to wrap up with a few things here. I've written some words down, Janaki. These are leadership words. They're not scripted. I write them down as I listen to the guests. Your story's been incredible. You are authentic. There's no question. You are courage. You are passion. I can hear it in your voice about what you do. And you are freedom. You're a picture of what freedom looks like to many women maybe who don't have that freedom because of their circumstances. So let's turn it to you as we wrap up, and I want to give you a chance to tell people where they can get a hold of your book and your body of work.
Sure. They can get a copy of my book on the Amazon website. Currently, it's in the form of an ebook. So Amazon website of your country, from broke to breadwinner.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Well, hey, Janaki, thank you very much for being on the show. We'll certainly look to having you back and talk more about those incredible concepts of, helping single moms achieve that dream life. And so everybody, find that true passion like Janaki did, live with that purpose, and live the life that you deserve and desire.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca